Welcome to the Kim D Snyder podcast, episode number 105. It is Monday, October 25th, 2021, day 56 on my journey to seven figures as one woman in 20 hours a week. This presentation is about executive presentation skills, and it is part 2 of episode 101. So I'll give you a little background, but for the full background on how I went from shy to speaker, go listen to kimdsnyder.com/101. This is the only time I've had a guest on my podcast in 100 episodes, and it's Patricia Fripp, Fripp. And we recorded this episode 7 years ago, and I'm just releasing it right now. Part of it was I didn't have the right mindset. I had imposter syndrome. I had fear of success. I had fear of failure. I also wasn't sure how I was going to put it into my current podcast format because I had decided to not do guests. I also was struggling with making sure that what I was sharing when I started my podcast, it was still in the corporate world, which you'll hear, I think, 1 or 2 references in the podcast. And I wanted to make sure it was in alignment. Anyways, I've re-listened to it a couple times in the last few days, and it's fantastic. Patricia has so much information that's really helpful to anybody that's any age. I mean, she works with executives. I work with a lot of leaders and executives as well. But this information will help you on putting together a presentation on and standing out. And so I really want you guys to listen to this. I think you're really going to enjoy it. It talks about, things that I totally align with about opportunities and options. The question I get all the time is, what do I talk about? And Patricia really gives some good insight and tips for you that you can start using right away. Being a lifetime learner and studying, and you get to hear how a hairdresser from England came over here and started coaching executives and that path that got her there. And there's references to what I even have on my program, Speak for Leads, Influence, and Visibility. It's just amazing how it's sort of come full circle. So I hope you enjoy it. Again, it's only audio, so you'll see my picture, but no words moving. And it's almost 20 minutes exactly.
Obviously, Kim, when I first got off the boat at 20, I couldn't have done that. I was a hairstylist, and I knew everyone in America was rich, and the streets were paved with movie stars. And I was very lucky. My first job was working in the Mark Hopkins Hotel, in the beauty salon there, and I met women from all over the country and all over the world. And then, at age 23, I was lucky enough to work in what was the first fancy men's hairstyling salon in San Francisco, when men's hairstyling was a new industry. And it was bought by Jay Sebring, the Hollywood hairstylist, who unfortunately died with Sharon Tate. However, he was the first man to really transform men's hairstyling, and his clients were movie stars: Paul Newman, Steve McQueen. At our opening party, Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward, Warren Beatty, Julie Christie came to our opening party. So I knew movie stars were everywhere. But I learned a couple of good lessons from Jay. And we got to remember, that's 1969. He said, Patricia, it doesn't matter that we have the best haircuts in town. The world has to know about it. And that was long before social media and podcasts and Facebook. And once Herb Cain, the local newscast, the columnist, wrote an item, I nearly said a blog item, it was an item in his column, about Jay Sebring, the phone did not stop ringing. He also was featured in Time magazine because he did George Peppard's hair for the Blue Max. He was on Time magazine. He talked about men's hairstyling in Playboy when nobody else was talking about men's hairstyling. But I knew at age 23, people do business with people they know. People do business with people who do business with them. People do business with people their friends talk about, and people do business with people they read about. Now, that principle has not changed. When I went into business for myself, I went to Dale Carnegie. I was recommended by one of my mentors. I went to Dale Carnegie course, and I loved the public speaking course. I took the management course and the sales course. And my friend said, now you need to practice, go to Toastmasters. And as you know, Kim, being involved in speaking yourself, people sometimes get the impression, I'll join Toastmasters, I'll take this speaking course, and I'll be done. No, developing any skill is going to be a lifetime endeavor. There might be less to learn, be it technology, writing, speaking, whatever the venue or the discipline, whatever it is you're studying, the more you get towards mastery, perhaps the less you have to learn, but there's more nuance. So whatever you want to learn, and we're focusing on executive presentations, it's going to be an ongoing process. The most important part is we have to enjoy the process. When I first went into business, I was traveling nationwide for a hair product company. And all my executive clients said, oh, you're speaking. Come to my Rotary Club, Kiwanis Club, Lions Club. And I realized that people that heard me speak came in my salon. So I started speaking at service clubs to help get customers for my staff. They were good hairstylists, but they weren't natural-born promoters. When I finished work, I went to Harpoon Louise. I call it flirting with the cute guys from the financial district. These days we would call it networking. But I would pass out my card and talk to people, and they would come in the salon. So that's how I use speaking. And from these first speaking engagements, people would say, well, what would you charge to say that to the Oakland appliance dealers? Or what would you charge to say this to the San Mateo school administrators? So after those two first paid speeches, which I had made total $175, I heard a professional speaker, because all my pals from the Dale Carnegie class, we went to all the seminars, and we flew to LA from San Francisco to go to a positive thinking rally. And Don Hudson, who's one of my good friends, past president, was the MC, and said, a lot of you asking about speaking, put your card at one of the booths and we'll let you know about the National Speakers Association. Well, I joined, and I met a local speaker. I was a fan of his, Chris Hegarty, and he was kind enough to meet me in Marin. And he said, Patricia, you must go to the National Speakers Association convention. And as I'd already joined from leaving my card at the booth, and I'm a great believer, Kim, that if someone you admire and wish to emulate gives you advice, you don't ask how much does it cost. You do it. Unfortunately, I could afford to go, and I went. And two amazing occurrences. One, I started cutting hair at 50. That was my apprenticeship. When I went to NSA, I was 32, 2 years into a 10-year lease. So if you think by the time I was 40, I would have already spent 25 years behind a chair. So wherever our listeners are in their careers, at some point you must realize there is always going to be a next step. There's going to be a next career. It might be adjacent to, it might be an extension from, and I realized, much though I love hairstyling, and I didn't know if I would have enough at 40, but I realized I needed an option. And speaking gave me a great way to promote my business. So it was successful enough that my salon didn't need my money, as it were. It didn't need, because I was solidly booked. And it developed my skills. And the second part, I actually got discovered by a big-time promoter, Mike Frank, who booked me to speak to 2,000 people on the same program, Dr. Robert Schuller, who was the minister from Garden Grove. So only in America. And who knew, 7 years later, I was the first woman president of NSA. Now, let's fast forward, because I started, and everyone said, well, hairstylist, what would you talk about? And no matter who we are, we talk about what we know. And there was one skill I had. I knew how to build and promote a small to medium-sized business because I'd done it. So my first subjects were how to get, keep, and deserve customers, how to promote your business, because that was my experience and being the star of my Dale Carnegie class. And with any skill, whatever it is, you have to practice. I got to be a good hairstylist because I practiced more than anybody else. I bring all my friends in the salon in the evening. When I was an apprentice, I'd do all the neighbors' hair at weekends. You don't have to be the best. I'm certainly not the best. You just have to work more than everybody else, and you learn from others who know more than you do. Same thing with speaking. I spoke a lot because my staff were trained to talk to any of their clients. Oh, if you got 20 people together, Patricia will come talk at your staff meeting, and so that's it. Well, now I'm a full-time speaker. I'm president of NSA. And as I'm having a very successful career as a keynote speaker, listen to your customers. This is a lesson from anyone. People will tell you how they'll pay you. So people would, turning point, people started saying, can you help our president? Can you help our executive? He's not very good speaker. But while you're here, just give him some advice. And to sit in an audience, for example, I remember talking to one man and they said, Patricia, he's a lot older than our staff. Doesn't quite relate. And I was talking to him and I said, and this is an advice for anybody starting to write a speech, don't know what to talk about, start at the beginning. And when I say the beginning, I mean, where were you born? What did your parents do? What advice did they give you? And I said to this exec, what did your dad do? He said he ran a gas station. And I was talking about this. And then we got on to what he was going to talk about. And then I was listening to his presentation. And somebody asked a question. And he looked at me and smiled and looked back at the guy and said, that reminds me about when I grew up, my dad ran a gas station. See, what executives don't realize is that how important their personal stories are, because we will respect a person who has the title of president of our company or CEO or chief financial officer. However, we work through lunch and inconvenience ourselves for the person. So these personal stories that you and I know go in our speeches, it's important we have to help our executives understand. Your staff, your team, your customers, your suppliers will be more loyal and committed to you when they see the person behind the position. So that was an important lesson. The second lesson was when I was speaking for a very famous company, I won't mention it, but a very famous company, and this was a division that sold food services to hospitals. And after my speech, she came up and said, I liked your speech. And Patricia, I loved how you delivered it. Can you teach our salespeople to speak like you? Because it takes us a year to be in a position to deliver an hour sales presentation to a hospital board. It's worth $9 million a year, and we are losing sales. It has nothing to do with our price or our service. The presentation skills of our competitors are better than ours. Can you help us? And obviously now, Kim, I could help them a lot better than I did then. But what those two people did, or one, the executive, when I first saw these simple conversations he could immediately incorporate, Yet he would never have occurred to him. And then secondly, I realized that it doesn't matter what's happening in the economy, people will always spend money on their salespeople. And I always say to clients, I can't tell you how to get in front of your client. I just absolutely 100% guarantee you're going to be more professional, more personable than your competition, and more persuasive. And it's all in what you say. So now, how does a hairstylist advise executives? One, you start where you are, and nothing happens overnight. The opening keynote of the conference where we happen to be attending is how long it takes overnight success. Nothing is overnight. But what executives usually hire me to help them with a speech for their company meeting, for the user conference. And where the entrepreneurial spirit comes in, Kim, what we speakers know that we have to teach our executives is, first of all, I'll give you a specific example. One of my favorite customers. And he is the president of Blue Diamond Almonds, and he wouldn't mind it. Wonderful, wonderful company. And they're doing superbly well, and it's very interesting because there is not enough demand in the world for almonds. Isn't that a great business to be in? They cannot grow them fast enough to sell them. And every year I help him with his presentation for the growers, who they get the almond from. And I said, you're a great speaker, you're developing the skills, you enjoy doing it. Now what we have to do is find places for you to speak outside of your own company, because it's great PR for the company, it's great PR for you personally as an executive. And so now he's emceed conferences for almond worldwide, and now my next presentation is really at a prayer breakfast, so it'll be totally different. But so this is always now you're developing the skills. Look for groups outside of your company that can help position your company and you. And it doesn't only have to be business, as with Mark, with a prayer break. It's not business, but people do business and talk about people they like, and that would be a perfect venue. Another example, with a biotech company, I'm their recommended executive speech coach, and I was helping it was the head of corporate finance, and he had to give a 4-hour presentation helping marketing managers understand the corporate finance, understand how, look, you take over as a new marketing manager and you want to make your mark. So you throw out all the programs that the last marketing manager did, rather than saying, we've invested millions or certainly thousands of dollars in this. Now how can we implement it better? Don't throw it away. And then the entrepreneur, I said, well, you know what we speakers would be doing? We'd make a little video to help promo our seminar at the National Speakers Association. So why don't we make a video that you can send to the people who are coming, promoting the session, what they're going to learn? So the 3 lessons I would say to any listeners: listen to your customers or your constituents. Well, actually, they're 4. The second is, make sure that personal stories, they might not overwhelm your message, but it shows the person behind the position. Then the entrepreneurial skills that a speaker would use speaking to expand their presence as part of their marketing mix. And then, of course, 4, even if it's an internal meeting. Maybe you got a staff meeting every 2 weeks. How do you make it more exciting? Well, how about a video in an internal message to promo what you're going to learn? Who's going to be honored? So, and these days, it's so easy to get your message across. Now, also executives, very often your communications department will put the script of your speech on your corporate website. You might not actually have said what's in the script because they wrote it for you. But what you could also do is have one of your communications team just video your presentation and add segments, have it embedded within the speech script.
I like that.
Yeah, and with Mark, he has a blog and a podcast, and his communication people, write up what they think he should be saying, and then they send it to me, and I hypnotize it. Just as you and I discussing, I am going to tell you, no, you're going to learn, you're going to hear. Say something nice, make it personable. Every word doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to put your personality. This is it. Take your personality with you. As I say to some of my engineer clients in Silicon Valley, some woman fell in love with you. Why don't you show your audience why?
Wow. Well, maybe that's where we should end it.
Yeah.
My love for you for volunteering and your love for the craft of presentations and speaking and helping all those executives. Thank you, because I'm sure folks and companies like myself appreciate a much more exciting speech, right? So with that, we'll go ahead and end it. So that was recorded in a conference room at a conference at the Rio Hotel in Las Vegas for the new Media Expo in 2014. We just spontaneously said, let's go record a session, and that was it. If you want to hear me stumble over the introduction at the beginning, go to episode 101. And I really love how Fripp brings in different stories from different levels of folks. I've gone to her training as well. She does speech training, and I need to pull those DVDs out as I look at my bookcase up here and do a refresher, because she has some amazing openings. So if you're considering doing some more speeches for your company, go to Fripp. She's amazing. fripp.com. I'll put her website in the show notes. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you. I know these were 2 longer sessions. Typically, my sessions are quite shorter, but it was a really good example about letting fear leave and just start wherever you're at. Who cares? I could have brought that episode back 1 year, 2, 5, 7, 8 years ago. Well, not 8, but within the last 7 years. But when I realized that what was holding me back, I wanted to be very, very specific about why I brought it back and bringing it back for a lesson. So thank you for listening today. For the show notes for this episode, go to kimdsnyder.com/105.